Gabby Moore, thank you for joining me on the ITA College Tennis Coaches podcast.
Thanks, Dave, for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you. I know it's a crazy time for you and all coaches dealing with the transfer portal right now. So, but hopefully, as that passes, things will slow down and you guys can regroup for the following season. It sneaks up on us quickly, but yeah, really want to get into you've had an incredible season, and we'll get into that. I know it didn't end probably the way you wanted, but went on an incredible run there for several weeks. So we can talk about that in a little bit while, but going backwards, you played your college tennis at Southern, then you spent 5 seasons coaching the men's and women's team at Jackson State. Both are in the SWAC, they're HBCUs. Now that you're at McNeese, is there anything that stands out to you that is very different from your current experience to your time at a HBCU?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, Southern, going to an HBCU, it's always going to be home, was home for me. It's honestly where I ended up falling in love with tennis, playing a sport all my life, but I really fell in love with tennis in college, and partially of why I'm coaching now. And the experience was awesome. And being able to coach at Jackson State, the same thing. I wouldn't say that it was different, but just very unique. Being at a historically Black college or a university, as an African American player, those opportunities weren't always an option for us. So being able to compete at an HBCU, have a voice for the HBCU community, was huge for me as a player and as a coach. So, as far as differences, I think, I do a lot of the same things as a coach that I do here now at McNeese. I think HBCUs were unique. We're a very unique institutions, and they have different values, I think, different cultures. Um, and the pathway looks a little bit different maybe in recruiting, but overall, the tennis is it's very similar. I think the only piece that may be different is just the recruiting pool. Playing for an HBCU as an American, it was something that I wanted to do. Like I had that pathway. I knew that this was the route I wanted to do. I wanted to play for a school that had a powerful meaning behind it, from my background. And
Mhm.
my culture background. And so recruiting players that kind of had that same intention, in the African American tennis community, was is different, for an HBCU more so than a predominantly white institution. But I think the tennis part, my values have stayed the same, from Jackson State. That's where I kind of built my career up, and I've learned a lot. I've done things differently, and the tennis, the technical, the on court, the development pieces, I just bring along with me to make needs.
Mhm. So I'm always fascinated speaking to coaches who coached both genders because I coached for 12 years, but I only ever coached one gender at a time. And then, we also have this crazy fact that we have so few women coaching men in any sport, in any part of the world, not just in tennis. But, um, you know, coaching the men at Jackson State, were there any challenges that you faced? Was there any because they're not used to having women coach them,
Sure.
and that can throw up a whole lot of different issues that they might have. But how was that experience? Because I know we have women listening to this who are coaching men or who might coach men in the future at some stage of their career. Obviously, we'd love to see it happen more, but what advice might you have for those? What are challenges you faced? How did you overcome them? And what advice might you have?
For sure. I mean, definitely. I mean, for sure, there are challenges. Coaching men, I had a great experience overall. I actually loved it. But there are things that, I needed to brush up on. I think obviously men's tennis is completely different from women's tennis. And, being a women's coach, I think I needed to educate myself a little bit more just on the technical, on the on court part, with player development. There's different tactics. They play a different game style than, most women do. I think that was probably the most difficult for me. But I was lucky enough to have a staff. I had a male assistant, which definitely helped the balance with, coaching both sports, and having that mentor piece where, he could step in if he needed to be. But overall, I wanted, again, with the recruiting, I had to recruit male players, and, they valued my dreams and my inspirations for the program. They valued what I was doing. And I think that was really important, I think, for anyone, that the men respected me as a woman coach, and wanted to be a part. They really believed in what I was trying to do there at Jackson State. And they trusted me within that process, which, speaks volumes, I think, too, going into it. But I definitely had to educate myself a little bit more, you know, in general, whether it's men or women, everyone is coached, or at this point wants to be coached a little differently. Like my intentions with the women might have been a little bit different with my men. I could be really stern with most of them. The energy was always, fired up. So kind of being able to balance both, knowing when I, could turn on the light switch for, the different personalities or the different energy that they needed me, in matches and practices, where, was also probably a big difference, coaching both. But I had a great experience. And I think, for advice for women, it's just like you have to be, grounded, and I think believe that you could do it. I think some people may, be like, oh, well, shy away from it, or think like there's no way, but you can. Like, um, we were really successful, I think, for the most part. And, I enjoyed my experience. I grew great relationships with my male players, and it made it more fun as a team, like with my values and having both men and women, and it was like a big family, and we really did everything together, on and off the court. So, I would just be like, if people are going to do it, just be confident in doing it. And it's kind of, when you're coaching, the leadership really doesn't change. It's if you're consistent in what you're doing, it's going to work out. Maybe you have to make some tweaks here and there with practices, and, scheduling, and how you approach situations. But the leadership piece is usually the foundation. And if you're confident and you trust yourself within that, there's no way that, women can't be successful with coaching men.
Absolutely, well said. Well, then, as you then transition then from coaching both genders to just one gender at McNeese State, I think in my mind, oh, that must be so much easier. But then, as I think about it more, the expectations then go up because you're dealing with less people. Like I think about, the one trainer for the 100 track and field athletes. Like those
Yeah.
athletes have very low expectations
Yeah.
for the trainer's attention. But when there's fewer now, those expectations go up. So yeah, how was that experience? How was that transition? Were there any surprises? And are the demands just as much, or do you feel like you have a little bit more space in your day to day?
I mean, well, at first it was definitely different. I remember like my first week in the office when the girls got back, when I accepted the position here at McNeese, and I'm like, wow, this is nice. I'm like leaning back. I have all this time on my hands. You're so used to delegating all your time in different areas when you're coaching too. Whether it's budgeting, whether it's, traveling, recruiting, it's a lot. And so at first it seemed like I had way more time to delegate in different areas. But I think that is the difference. It's like, um, things that I maybe didn't have time, with at Jackson State, with maybe the relationship piece. I had 16 players, and as much as I wanted to give them all attention with every little thing, every little detail, sometimes I just couldn't reach everybody at the level that I wanted to. So being able to just have eight and then give them more of that individual attention that they may need was helped, I think has helped me a lot
Yeah.
because that's what I'm passionate about is just not coaching, but being able to mentor, like, what can I do to help you? Like, how can we get better? How can we do this? Individual goals more so than team goals.
Mm.
So I think over time, I've found ways, or I had more time to value different areas. So whether it's the development piece and doing individuals, we do individuals with the girls all the time, but I couldn't do every individual, with men and women, when I
Yeah.
was at Jackson State. And even recruiting, recruiting, I'm able to travel a little bit more. I spend more time delegating different parts of the job just a little bit more and more in depth than I maybe was able to when I had two programs. So I think it ends up weighing out.
Yeah.
You just end up finding um, places that you want to spend more time in, whether it's recruiting, whether it's on court, whether it's the development, the team building piece. I just have more time to do the extra just with one team.
Right. Yeah. And how about, yeah, because there's so many there's only so many hours in the day. That's not going to
Yeah.
change. But do you think the expectations from the players are higher about your availability and your ability to um not necessarily help them with problems, but it might be that, finding solutions and they're coming to you with every little thing that's going on. Whereas with two teams, they'd be like, hey, Gabby's managing so much, we don't want to bother her. Or is that the same, or is it kid by, I say kid by kid, student athlete by student athlete?
um, I think it's I think as women and as a women's sport, again going back to that mentoring piece, like that was one thing that I made clear when I took over this position is my availability, that I want to be that person that they could come to for anything. And I definitely think that because of that, it has allowed them to consistently, open door policy if they need something, if they want more time on the court, if they want, to meet with me, that my availability will be there. So yes, I think that part of it, the need for me more as a coach it has grown. But it's because I've also stated and put that out there that, like, if you do need it, if you want it, whatever I could do, I will be there. And because I've had a great relationship with a lot of the players, they're always looking, for my advice or my help. And that's what I want to do. I want to be, that extension to them as much as I can be. That was honestly one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to branch off into, just coaching women, was just to have more time to mentor, to build, to be there in those areas, because I just feel if I'm not giving my all, if I can't give everything in order to develop and make them better people, make them better players, then I'm just not doing my job right. So I would say yes, it's been more demanding here, but I love it and I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Okay. So what do you believe you did really well in your first year at McNeese? Because I think you inherited maybe a team that went 3-16, and then the following year went 15-6. I'm sure there was different players and things like that, but there was a sense of winning. There was obviously a change within the culture there to go from really one extreme to another, 3-16 to 15-6. Those are on two very different sides of the win-loss equation. So what do you think now, reflecting upon it, you did well in that first year?
Um, well, when I accepted the job, it was honestly, I think maybe early June. So I had very little time to um, interact, like my biggest goal was to get to know them. I think that was the most important, like figure out who they were, um, get to know them as quickly as I could. Most of them were back home by then, but just laying that foundation of open communication, getting to know what works, what, the different, it was my first transition. I've was at Jackson State for a long time. So by that time I had pretty much all my recruits in the door.
Right.
So I had inherited a team that had no idea who I was. I had no idea who they were, had never had a conversation. So it was kind of just like recruiting all over again. I had to get to know them and explain to them pretty much what I wanted to do for McNeese, what I had, my visions, my goals, my aspirations for this program. Um, so laying that foundation, I'm a true believer of culture wins. So I'm a huge culture coach as far as knowing that if we have a unit, if we could buy into the same goals and do this thing for ourselves with each other, we could accomplish things that are bigger than ourselves. So I took so much time. The first year was more off the court work than it really was on the court because I
Mm.
can remember our first practice. I was looking at this team and I'm like, these girls have talent. Like they're good. Like what is wrong? What it's not the tennis. It was never the tennis. I think, but having a really good culture, a safe environment, and it was really just them believing that they were able and capable, to be competitive again. So I think scheduling was super important. I wanted them to feel good on the court. I'm sitting in the locker room telling them this is my vision. Like this could be a championship program. This is what I want to be a championship program. And half of them are looking at me with like I have two heads. Like,
Right.
do you not see our record? We were 3-16. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. But if you trust in me and instill, um, what I'm trying to do here, like it's going to happen. So they had, the skill. They worked extremely hard.
Okay.
And you could tell that they believed, that they were capable of, but it was just the consistency and them trusting me as their coach, trusting the process. And we just had to build that foundation and we worked every day extremely hard on it. Lots of meetings, lots of individual team bonding activities. Um, and then they started to see the results for themselves, and then it was just like a consistent spiral of success. And I think that was the biggest joy, is just being able to see like where they were coming from to like what they were really able to accomplish by just truly believing in themselves.
Mm. And Gabby, obviously this summer we'll have a lot of coaches again make that transition. They'll be going to teams that they obviously didn't recruit, and want to get to build those relationship with those players who might be scattered all over the world. So what was your approach to that in June when you got there to develop that relationship? Was it just setting up Zoom calls with them? I mean, did you have specific questions, or were you just kind of really trying to get to know them at a human level and understand their family and their background? And were you taking notes? Were there things that popped up during the summer that you felt like, okay, these are some things I need to address with this player when they get on campus and I see them person to person? Maybe just take us through that process, because a lot of coaches are going to go through that here in the next few weeks or months.
For sure. I mean, for me, I definitely did Zoom calls. So the first initial call was all individual Zoom calls with all the girls. And it was really just conversation, getting to know me, my background, getting to know them, like what their expectations are going forward, like
Mm.
what were the things that they struggled with a lot the following year. Consistent phone calls, Zoom calls over the span of weeks before they arrived back. And then we did group calls too, where we were all on one call as a team because when I wanted to come back in August and feel like they already had a connection. I didn't want them to come in kind of blindsided and what didn't know what to expect. So we definitely had tons of Zoom calls, um, tons of group, team calls. There were some changes within the team. There were some girls that, decided to go a different route, and I had brought in 3 of my own recruits going in, moving forward. So that honestly helped too, because they had already had built a relationship with me and could kind of be that foundation for what I was expecting and kind of know that leadership skill that I already, was explaining to them and like what I wanted to do with the program. But yeah, it's just tons of communication, not really necessarily about tennis.
Yeah.
And it was just really trying to get to know them of who they are as people. It's kind of like a relationship almost, I think, with anyone coaching and their players. It's like they have to trust you. I think that's the number one thing I talk about all the time is that trust piece, that open communication. If you don't have trust, you can't expect them, to communicate with you and to know how to fix and have answers to solutions. And um, it was mainly just wanting to truly get to know who they were as people. So I had a better idea of how to approach them and what we were going to do to build this program back to where I knew it could be when they got here.
Hmm. Excellent. So at one point this season, as we referenced earlier, you had a 16 match win streak, which is incredible and doesn't happen very often in any sports at any level, etc. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
Again, what do you think you did really well this year, either prior to the season, maybe last fall? Throughout the season? Were there any changes, tweaks that you made, additional days off, additional practices, individuals? Talk about why you think you went on such a good run and maybe some of the things that influenced that.
Yeah, definitely. 16 wins in a row is definitely not easy for sure. So, and I would tell them all the time, like that is incredible. You have to show up a lot and people don't realize, no matter what, especially with tennis, it's still an individual sport. You have to, when you put six girls out there, they still have to show up and compete, no matter what. So, um, we honestly tried our best not to focus on the numbers, the stats. You know, my goal was that we took every match one match at a time. We didn't want to think too far ahead. We had our schedule, and it's like this is the important thing this week. Let's focus on this, and then we build from there. Next one to the next one to the next one. That was the overall goal. Um, I think a big part of that piece was keeping everyone healthy. We had a really, really healthy season, which I'm really thankful for. To be competing consistently, my lineup pretty much never changed. So making sure that they were, going to treatment, doing good physio. Back to your question about days off. If we had a really rough weekend, I'd give them an extra day off. We'd get 2 days off in a row. If that would mean that they would come back 100%, or feel much better the next day mentally, physically. And I made that a priority. Again, let's talk about it. If you really feel like you need some extra time, if we could be 100% and give 110% for an hour and a half instead of 2.5, let's do it. Whatever we can, to keep us as healthy as we can, to keep us mentally focused, mentally ready. Those kind of things, those kind of tweaks here and there.
Hmm.
But overall, I think they wanted it. Like they had a goal, and we were like, could we try to at least be undefeated? Could we try to not go 20-1, 19-1? And they really wanted it, but we didn't. I tried my best as the coach to not have us focused on the streaks and, kind of just focus one match at a time, one game at a time. And we ended up looking up, and the next thing we're 16 matches later. Here we are.
Yeah.
But definitely exciting. I think it was great for the program. The girls, um, they just loved competing. They love competing, and that was one thing that separated us was the fire that they have. They're so determined, and like when they're putting their mind to something, that they really, really, truly want it. So they're the ones out there doing all the work, and we're just, an attachment to it.
Mhm.
But definitely cool to be able to say that we were, you know, had that much long of a win streak.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so going into next year now, uh, Yeah, look, we want to win every match we play, right?
Yeah.
And I know the season didn't end the way you wanted to. Obviously, won that conference title and playing the NCAA tournament. But how are you now thinking about how you build upon the success this year and to go one step further next year? You've obviously won conference titles at Jackson State, so you know you know what's required there. So yeah, how are you thinking, or is it still too early? Do you need a few more months to digest all of it?
No, I think honestly, I mean, as coaches, we got to be a little crazy to do this every year and say, hey, there's always next year, right? Like, there's always another opportunity
Yeah.
to be a winner. No, but I think for me, I try not to think too far, you know. Obviously, every year comes with something new, whether it's new players, new obstacles, new challenges. You just never know.
Right. Yep.
Um, you just literally never know. Every team is looking to get stronger. Every team is looking and has the goals of winning and having a tournament berth and um, so I try my best to once again build. If we could continue with this foundation that we've created, I think every year, the last 2 years, we've gotten in a better position within our conference to potentially win a championship here. Um, and they know that. And then going forward, now we know, okay, now we go one step closer.
Hmm.
Let's keep going off of that. Let's keep that foundation, what we've built, because it's working here, and build off that again, one day at a time. It's a new season, new matches, new players. So I think the values of what our program is looking for, the recruits that our program is looking for, the players that we already have, are the reason, or what is what's going to get us to that position. Um, Obviously we all want to be talented and win matches on the court, but it takes more than just talent to win. Um, so I think our values and the players that we have, the values that we want as a team, the little things, I always tell them the little things play the biggest factor, I think, in going for a championship, competing for a championship. But I will say they do know how to compete for one now. They felt the pressure, they felt that moment of what it takes to be there, and sometimes experience, um, is the best teacher, for those moments. So, of course, yeah, next year, we don't know what that looks like. We don't know, what's going to happen. But I do have faith if we have the same mindset and continue to be like 1% better every day when we're on the court and off the court, we have high chances.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I look forward to following along. As you're talking about experience, yeah, I mean, obviously nothing replaces the day-to-day experience of being a coach and the lessons that you're learning and then applying going forward. But what steps outside of that have you taken to develop yourself as a college tennis coach specifically?
I really, over the past few years, have tried to be a lot more involved within our collegiate hub. I did the ITA mentorship program last year
Hmm.
with Shelly at University of Kentucky. She's now the head coach at University of Kentucky, and it was honestly a great experience. Loved it. Loved Shelly. Just trying to give myself key I think like key ways of educating myself a little bit more about college tennis. For pretty much my whole career, maybe a year and a half, I was only an assistant, so I've been a head coach most of my career.
Right.
And although that's exciting, I still have room to learn and grow. And I want to be able to, bounce ideas off of people and ask for advice, or like, how would you handle this? Or how would you handle that? So the mentorship program with ITA was great. I also love like the ITAW. That's a huge thing, especially as a woman in coaching, has been phenomenal. Just getting to even make group chats with like women in coaching and um, network with other coaches and be able to, whether it's venting or bouncing ideas off, because we're always trying to be creative and trying to find new things and adapt. I think the biggest tool is to open yourself up and build those connections with a lot of coaches that are in similar spots than you.
Mhm.
And also, like, kudos to the ITA because they've done a phenomenal job of trying to help the development piece with these coaches and have groups and opportunities for coaches to grow within their field, because we could always learn something. Every year I tell my girls all the time, I'm still learning about myself as a coach,
Sure.
and it's important you have the right people around you and you have support. But the highlight for sure was the mentorship program. I loved it. It was great. Maybe in a couple of years I'd be able to give back and be a mentor instead of a mentee. That's a goal of mine too. But just, I think, expand myself out to more coaches. And I used to be a lot of closed off and kind of stayed in my own lane, and did my own thing. But now I've reached out to coaches. I've introduced myself, to people, within the ITA, or coaches in bigger conferences, and kind of get their perspective. Coaches that have been doing this for years, even when I was playing, and has seen the change in college athletics along the way. And try and really educate myself and learn from them, because you could always be better. You could always be better.
Yeah. And what are some of those areas, Gabby, where maybe weakness is too strong a word, but areas that you've identified that you feel like, wow, I really need to work on this as a coach, or I need to spend more time in this area. Um, what are some of those, or just you've no weaknesses, all strengths?
Gabby off record would probably say that, but no, 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 no. No, I think as coaches, we're always looking for ways to improve, right? I think we should be, if we want um, to do it the right way. I think you're always looking for ways to improve. I think right now the biggest thing for me is just probably the change, the model of college athletics. It's been crazy, with NILs, with how things are shifting within the sport. um, when I got into coaching, it was for the mentorship piece. I wanted women and men to have the same experience I did as a college athlete. It was the best 4 years of my life. And that's why I'm doing what I do. It's not for the wins, but it's for the relationship piece. It's for, 10 years down the road when, I'm getting a call to, be in a wedding, or, um, I'm in Europe and I'm going to go visit the family and their husbands or wives. And I think the dynamic within the portal and the NILs and the changes that I even 10 years back, we didn't have. It was a completely different, space for college sports. And even though I think I'm still young, it's kind of impacted me as like what my vision is for college athletics, and being okay and learning how to adapt to that, and knowing that maybe I won't have a kid for 4 years, and seeing them continuously develop. I might have them for 2 or 3,
Mhm.
and being okay with that, and still being able to mentor and build the best relationship I could with them, even if it's for a season or even if it's for 4 seasons. But being able to make that impact that sticks with them long term, it's probably the one thing that I want to continue to get better at, and just learning new ways to adapt, being creative, especially at a mid major, when they are all these, different ways of scholarships and money now that's, a part of the process, and just finding ways to be creative and getting, the right recruits in who are going to value the program and value what we can offer them here at McNeese.
Yeah, very good. And then you mentioned ITAW, and it's you know, I think great the work that Lauren's doing, and bringing
Yeah.
women together. And we have a group of coaches that are single parents, single moms. And do you have any advice for that group, or maybe conversations you've had within ITAW as to how you manage the demands of being a college coach, especially in season, and raising a child by yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't personally had the chance to, share my stories and talk about it, as much as I would love to, because I think it's super important. I really love that question because I think my path is unique, as a single mother. I am a single mother, and I'm juggling being a coach and being a mother to these 8 girls, and having a child myself, a 6-year-old who counts on me as well. But I think for me, I when I started, when I my first year as a head coach, it was in 2017. I had just had my son. He was a newborn. I was an interim head coach at that. Like it wasn't official yet, and I'm going into my first season. My Carter's born December 1. I have 4 weeks until the
Oh,
kids get
wow.
back, and I'm on the road. And he's been with me the entire way, every year, every step. um he is part of the package, and I've been blessed and honored to have such a great kid, and been at places where um I'm valued, and that my girls or my guys love him. I always say I have 8 babysitters consistently if I need them. um but yeah, it's hard. It could be hard sometimes, but I don't think that's ever stopped me for reaching my goals. And I think him seeing his mom, um, he's gonna look up when he's older and be like, "Wow, like my mom was really strong. Wow, my mom was doing this," and just trying to be a good role model for him too. That you could do both, that you could go for your dreams and aspirations, and still be a mom and go home. Is it hard? Yes, I'd be lying to say it's not hard. But it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding, and especially when you're being able to be successful, and he had your kids be a part of that. um, it's it's sometimes undescribable. But I think the biggest advice I would have for women that are single mothers in sport, that are coaching, it's be where you're appreciated. I think that's been a big part of my success, is that I every school that I've been to has really supported me. Starting with Jackson State, um, he's always, my son has always been a part of, the package. He would travel. He is with me at practices if need be. I have pictures of me at 5:30 a.m. practices, and he's literally attached to me while I'm feeding balls. So I'm very thankful and blessed to have had the support I've had within my administration. Even coming here to McNeese, my athletic director, Heath Schroyer, took a chance on me, and I one thing I promised him was to turn this program around, and even he knew my situation. I'm very open about it, to let him know, like, hey, this is what I need. I need support. I need you to be on board in my situation, but know that I'm going to get the job done, that I will always get the job done. But just as long as you support me within it. And he was completely on board. And same with my players, I think it's a great lesson for them. Again, I'm not just a coach, but I'm a mentor for them. And I want to be a good role model and know that things happen and this is reality of life. But you could be a strong woman. You could do it. If you want to have a kid, whether it's, with a spouse, or if it's a single mother, or, you could still be successful. And I think that's something that they see. And I'm very open and honest with them about it. And they have questions, and they ask the hard questions. And I'm very raw when it comes to it with them, because they deserve to know, as I trust them and I value them, and I want them to make the right steps going forward, and know that sometimes life hits you, and as long as you're strong enough to get back up, you could continue, and you could go far. So I'm a huge advocate for it, and I'm a huge advocate for women in sport. I'm a huge advocate for mom in sport. Again, I will never forget at the convention, maybe my first convention ever, I think it was probably 2018. I was part of the minority scholarship that was given for it. And there was a panel. We have to bring that panel back, Dave. It was a panel for moms who coach, moms who coach. And I think Christina at South Florida was on it. Ronnie, I remember, was on it. I was like in there crying almost. I was trying not to cry because I got so choked up about the stories. And that's when I knew, like, I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm going to be okay. Literally, it was the panel that made, of course you have doubt, but I was like, I'm going to be okay. These are some of the top women coaches in this sport, legendary coaches in this sport, and they did it. Now granted, not all of it, were in my situation, but it was still inspiring to know that you could make a difference within your career, make a difference in your career, and still be able to have both and be happy, doing both.
Yeah.
So I think if you truly believe in yourself and you're willing to, be around good people and have good support system, that anything is possible.
Excellent. All right, let's move
Thanks
into
for
our
asking that, Dave. I appreciate that.
no, thanks for your great answer and the advice. That means that'll mean a lot to a lot of young coaches hopefully listening. And
Yeah,
yeah, for any coach out there, just like you said, setting your mind to something, setting these goals and working towards it. Things are going to come up in life from many different angles. And so as long as you kind of have a North Star you're aiming yourself at, it might not be a straight line there, but you'll weave in and out and likely get there if you keep working towards it. So
absolutely.
yeah. Okay. Best piece of advice you have ever received?
Yeah, there's so many. Probably, I would say, be where your feet are. Someone told me that one time, like, be where your feet are, like, be in the moment, be present. I think, especially for me, and it's almost like it's eye opening because I never want to think too far ahead or think too far behind, but like sometimes the answer is right in front of you. And then if you're not where your feet are, you can miss it. So I think be where your feet are, enjoy the moment, enjoy the process. Kind of that's what I take from it. Um, Focus on the now and don't focus too far ahead and too far behind. Because I feel like as coaches, we get so wrapped up in like, what can I do better? What can I do this? How can I fix this? And
Mhm.
sometimes you just need to be right there, right then, and like focus on the now, and it will happen. It will just happen. So
Yeah.
probably that.
Yeah, I think as coaches, you're forced so often to think about the future, right? Years in advance, recruiting classes, scheduling.
Yeah.
You're always thinking about the future. And so yeah, great advice. Is there a book that's been influential on your coaching career?
So I'm not much of a reader. But I was talking to my assistant I met about this. She's awesome. And I'm like, gosh, I really don't read that much. Maybe that's what I need to do is start reading a little bit more. That will help me along my way. That's probably something you could add to the things I need to improve in my my career. But I recently read The Hard Hat by John Gordon.
Hmm.
It was a book. We read a team book over the winter break, and it's phenomenal, especially when it's like team building, good leadership skills. Like it was about like 21 ways to be a great teammate.
Okay.
But I think I learned a lot about it as a coach too. Like how do I implement these things as a leader of this program? Um, because I really do feel like the foundation starts with the coaches. Like you have to be consistent in the area of like where you want to, be successful in, where you want to grow in order for them, to do it. Like if I'm not doing that, why are they going to do it? Like if I'm not here in my office working hard and busting my behind, to get them better, why should they? So if you haven't, have you ever read the book?
No, I've never read it. I've read some of his other books. And yeah, people rave about it. I've not read that book. I'm not a huge John Gordon fan, if I'm honest. But that's just me. Other coaches love it and
Yeah.
um yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's too American for me is probably how
Well,
I'd
it's a
say
true
it.
story. This one's a true story.
I'll give it a go. I'll
Uh,
put an open mind. I'll read it. I promise.
it's very short read, but it has good things. And we used it within our year. Like we had a hard hat, we went all in. Like the hard hat was awarded to a player, for good leadership skills, like that represented. But great book, highly
Okay.
recommend. And I don't read, so maybe that
Okay.
will.
Is there a favorite drill you like to do with your team?
Yeah, so we have this one drill. I call it the burnout, but I don't know if other coaches do it. So it's two to a court. It's a baseline drill. We usually start off with it, especially if my girls aren't moving their feet enough, and we need some energy, to keep them going. But two on a court. One, we have one player in the back on the deuce side. We set up cones on the other and on the same side, closer to the baseline. And then there's one player moving consistently all around. They have the whole court that they have to move. So that player, to say that player in the deuce side of the court um, is moving the player on the opposite side, but that the player on the opposite side has to hit 20 balls in 3 minutes past the cones.
Hmm.
So they're moving consistently, but they're going for depth, and they have 3 minutes to hit 20 balls. And if they don't, then they have to do a quick sprint. So kind of lots of movement, but then they're getting tight. Say they don't have the 20 balls, and it's they're at number 15 and they have a minute left. Just really focusing through, the adversity, or when they're tired, and still going for their shots. So it's fun. We do it mostly, at least probably 3 to 4 times a week. Gets them focused, and then again they're moving a lot. And we do it on both sides, the do side and the ad side. So we call it the burnout, because by the time we finish, they're like dead. So
Exhausted.
exhausted.
Okay. Is there one piece of advice you would give to the 2017 version of Gabby at Jackson State?
Yeah. Well, that was probably the most tested time of my career. I would probably tell myself just to trust the process, Like
Hmm.
I spoke on it again. At that point, 2017, I was a newfound mother, to the most amazing kid. And I would have never thought I'd look here. And, there's so many things, like there's no way I could do. I had two teams, again, two teams with a newborn. I'm
Yeah.
doing it by myself. And, it's like, there's no way I could do this. There's no
Mm.
way. And now looking at it, it's just like, I did. And and there was always a way. And I'm a true believer in my faith, and know that like everything, that's supposed to happen is going to happen, and that God really has a plan for me. And, um, looking back at it, probably then trusting the process would have been the biggest advice I could give myself, and just knowing that everything is going to be okay and it's going to work out for you. And
Hmm.
yeah, that would probably be the best advice I'd give myself.
Very good. And then, is there one rule change you would like to see adopted by college tennis?
Dave, the let's, can we bring, I hate it. Can, I hate it. That would be it. The let, like, I
Ex
want my second
explain
serve back. I want,
explain why the lets are annoying.
it's just not needed. Like, for women, like we don't hit that hard of a serve where it really matters. It's like, just bring the second serve back. Just give us the serve back. Like, did we really have to change that, Dave? No, I don't think we did. Like, it
Well,
didn't really take
well,
me that much out of.
I should say we kind of did. The NCAA were asking at that moment in time that we bring as many rules in line across all genders, all divisions. They were moving the sports in that direction. They've now gone in a different direction. But I've always questioned why do we get a do-over on the serve when it hits the net cord, but we don't on a forehand
on
or a
a, on a
backhand or
point.
volley? Like
Yeah,
what's so special about the serve? Why do we get another
that's
chance?
true.
I don't, yeah. but that's
That's
funny
very
that
true.
you say that. Okay, well, we'll say, and look, I don't make the rules. We have a rules committee and all the
Well,
rest of it. So,
have we ever asked the men? Do the men like, playing on the let? I mean,
well, I played it. I played college tennis, so I I just I didn't coming from Ireland, we didn't play it, so I had to adapt. But I just feel like you adapt quickly. Like it's like it happens, I don't know, three times a set. It's like whatever. Like if it was happening like three times a game, then I might have been more concerned at that time. But I don't
yeah, but
know.
that's what I say. Like, if it's not happening that much, why even change it in the first place?
Um, yeah, I well the impetus was that was one rule that would be relatively easy to bring everybody in line
Yeah, for sure.
with. And then I know junior ITFs they're using it. I'm shocked that the ATP and WTA haven't implemented it yet because I think it makes, tennis can be a bit slow sometimes, especially at the beginning of sets. And it's
Yeah,
like if this happens, I don't know, three to five times a set, again, doesn't make a big difference, but it makes a wrinkle of excitement. Like I think the fans
yeah,
actually enjoy
yeah.
it better.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I mean, I love it when it works for me, but like,
yeah. No, that's the thing. When you're watching a match and a player does it twice, like it's like they miss their first serve, they go up to the net, pick the ball, and then they hit their second serve, hits the net, goes over. They do another second serve. It's like, can we just get on with this point,
yeah,
please?
I know.
Um, but uh, but no, that's funny. So I will share that with our rules committee that this was brought up on the podcast,
Yes.
and we need
You
to
can give
make.
him my number. I'll make a whole, thing on it.
Yeah, well, think about my argument there about the forehands hitting the net or the backhand.
That's
So
true. That's a
yeah,
good point too. But
yeah,
that would be that's
that's
another
another.
level. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Gabby, this has been a joy. Thank you so much for sharing all your advice, your story to date, and yeah, excited to see what next season brings for you.
Thanks so much, Dave, again for having me. It was a pleasure.